Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Casual Sports Podcast. As always, I'm Alec DeBerna. That's Mike Wolfgang, and this is the end of the week. Mike, we're finally here.
Thank you.
It's been a long week, all in all, I think, in sports, out of sports. It's all just felt very long. I'm glad for one it's coming to an end, and I think partially of that, as I mentioned, I'm going on vacation like next week, so I was just waiting for this week to end to finally get there. So maybe that's part of the reason mine has felt so much longer.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's been a hot week too.
Oh yeah,
and
that week, definitely.
You have that week before vacation. You know, it seems like a long week.
Everything's been slow cooking the last week.
Yep. Makes it worth it.
I must say, I am quite sunburnt from the little amounts of sun I've already seen so far this week. So vacation will be something, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But, Mike, I guess let's go into it. NBA playoffs last night, and we have crowned a champion in the Golden State Warriors. You made the pick at the beginning of the playoffs, and it finally comes to fruition, Mike, here at the end of it. I guess we've talked a lot about the series, a lot about the teams in total. I think the way we should go with this to finish it off, final thoughts of Golden State playoffs, this series, the run, the season, the comeback, the dynasty, wherever you want to go with it, go for it. You made the pick here. You picked Golden State to take it.
As everybody knows, I'm not a Golden State fan, and I wasn't going for them in these playoffs because I was a fan of them. I just thought they were going to win. I thought they were the best team, and I brought this to show you.
Oh,
so quick story about the shirt though. So. Actually, the first year that they beat us, my dad, his buddy lives in San Francisco, so they went to a Warriors game that year, and they saw him play Dallas in Oracle. So I don't wear that shirt. I just pulled it out because I've never worn it once because I don't like them. My dad just got it because it's a souvenir because he was in Oracle, so I just brought it out because I picked him, and I thought you'd like that. But anyway, no, I'm not shocked about what happened because we saw it when they go on that 21-0 run to start the game that it's just, like I keep repeating myself, when they do that stuff, they can't be beaten when they go on runs like that. And I miss seeing the Cavs in the finals, but I don't miss seeing that against my team because it's frustrating. You can't do anything about it. You just look at it. You have to sit there and watch it.
Right.
And I just, for some reason, the last 2 years they've had injuries. They've been the worst team in the league, and it's large part because of the injuries they have because they're to their best players. And I just had that feeling like if they come back, I didn't really think it'd be this year. I just liked them in the playoffs, but I thought to win a championship, they were going to need another actual year for Clay to get back. I'm shocked the way he got back as quickly as he did. He didn't look like himself, but he's a large part why they won. The reason why.
I mean, from January to now, I think they put up at the end of the game his stats in the playoffs. He still averaged 17 points per game in the NBA Finals, which, I mean, I think you kind of look at every game in turn, you kind of put them all together, and I don't think you see that 17 points per game because he kind of was a no-show in a lot of moments, and it wasn't the Klay Thompson that we remember from 3 years ago when they were going up against Toronto even, or back against the Cavs. It didn't feel like him. But the fact that he still put down 17 points per game, I think speaks values to his ability on coming back and making this comeback because, double torn Achilles, you go back 20, 30 years ago, that's career ending. when it happened to Kobe in the later parts of his career, I think there were some question marks that would Kobe ever truly be able to come back, and he did eventually. It's going to take a while because I'll speak to out of having a knee injury and knowing the mental side of it. It's a hard recovery thing. Your joints may feel fine at the end of the day, but every time you take a step, you're just thinking in the back of your head, what if it's my last step before that tears again?
I think Alec cut out there, but yeah, he was talking about the part with Clay. And I was talking about the other day when you have injuries, or
I'm here.
I was picking up where you left off because when you were talking about the injury that I was saying
it's most of the time a non-contact injury. It's just a whack event that happens, and when you have one of those, you're always so nervous about it happening again. And the fact that he was still able to come out there after that and was, I think, second or third on the team in scoring, it speaks values to, I think Klay Thompson is going to be able to make this complete recovery, get back to Clay by next season. This offseason should be a big jump for him. He's only 32. I think he's got plenty of time to go here in the league. I mean, he also averaged 20.4 points per game, which is higher than his career average so far of just 19.4. So Clay he's going to come back. I don't have any quarrels with thinking that he's done by any stretch, or that we're never going to get back to the guy that can hit 11 threes on 3 dribbles in an entire ball game. I think that's going to come back. I'm not worried about Klay Thompson.
Well, I think the part I kind of brought this up the other day when we were talking about the injuries with him, because torn ACL and Achilles back to back, and I know you said you had an ACL injury. I never had an ACL tear, but I've had knee problems in the past where I've sprained it or whatever in sports, and whether I don't care what injury is, whether it's severe or something minor, you always question it when you come back. Like I said, you question how easy it is to get injuries, but where before you got it, you thought, oh, I'm not going to get anything. So, and going back to back from that, like him, where he had 2 serious injuries, where he's out for a year for both of them, and I think that was a big storyline coming into this, and I'm happy that for their big 3 that they have, a lot of people don't like them, a lot of people don't like Draymond, whatever. But I like how real of a person that, like, especially Draymond is, because I saw last night after the press game, or after the post game press conferences, he was saying in the interview when they got the trophy, these Celtics fans gave me a hard time, but he's like, I respect them. They came here and they cheered for their team and their city. They were all for it. They were hardcore. So as much as people don't like Draymond and all these other things about the Warriors, I like how authentic they are, because you could just sit out here and say, oh, I can't stand these people, and just keep acting like a jerk about it. At least he acknowledges that they were a good fan base, and I like that part of it.
Good fan base. Supportive fan base might be the better word than a good fan base. Supportive. It's still Boston hardcore. At the end of the day. Let's not forget that.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But how about a little bit about the game here? In my opinion, Boston had a really great game. This final game in the series here in Game 6, if it wasn't for the good start by Golden State, this would have been Boston's game to win. I mean, I'll say it, they got kind of blown out in that first half. I mean, they were down by 15 points going into the half. It was a sloppy start. But then I think Boston, they had Golden State's third quarter. Normally, Golden State's the team you look at in the third quarter. But I think Golden State being up by 15, they let off the gas a little bit. And it bit them, because Boston, they made that thing a game. They pulled that back within 10 points to go into the fourth quarter. And to do that against a team like Golden State, they had a few close runs as well. They made it down, I think, 5-6 points before Golden State got back into it a little bit. I thought everything Boston did was actually pretty good. I don't hate the game plan. I think they were a lot better when it came to complaining about fouls in this entire game. I think it was a lot cleaner in that aspect. I think the referees in general were a lot cleaner with the calls as well. I watched the second half of this game, and I can't say I was terribly upset at any call like I have been in the past. So cleaner game in that aspect. And there wasn't a ton of free throws either. There was only 12 for Boston, 8 for Golden State. Boston finally shut down the paint for Golden State, held them to just 32 points in the paint. Boston had 38. Turnovers were still bad, but that was from both sides. Golden State had 15. Boston had 22. Both of those were bad. Steals, Golden State getting those few extra turnovers to win their favor. But blocks, Robert Williams down under. Can we give him some credit for his performances last night? I mean, in that third quarter, he was single-handedly locking down the painted area for Boston. Loved that. Assist, 27 each. Rebounds, a differential of just 3 in this ball game. And field goal percentage, Boston was finally the better team in that aspect. But they took 12 less shots in this game. And you look at the final score, and you see those 12 shots there because they got nearly half of those to fall out of the 12. So they got 6 out of those 12 to fall almost, and they won by 13. Those numbers add up pretty well. And for the first time in this series, maybe the most surprising, Golden State finally outshot Boston at the three-point line. And they only did it by 2%. And this was the first time in the series Boston, the only thing I didn't like was they went away from what got them there when it came to shooting. Their defense was great. 103 points given up in an NBA Finals. Yeah, that's a good number. That's a good number to have. 103, you can live with 103. On offense, 90, you cannot live with 90 points in a game. That's the part. They went away from the 3. They were shooting at just 2% less than Golden State, but yet Golden State had 18 more shot attempts from beyond the arc. 18. That number right there tells me Boston, they lost their confidence. And I think that's that first half. Golden State was getting those shots to fall. Steph Curry started out 2 for 3, but he went cold in the second half. He hit 3 quick threes out of the break and then didn't hit another one to finish off the entire game. The door was open for Boston, but they never walked through it. Mm-hmm. Golden State was ready to hand this game over to them in that third quarter. When Boston kept coming back, Curry went cold. Everybody was going cold. And then Boston stopped shooting 3. So it became just you get a layup, you get a layup, you get a layup, you get a layup, back and forth. And there was no room to grow because Boston was avoiding the 3, even though they've shot better in the entire series. That's my one thing about this. Overall, though, it was a great game. This game 6, I think, kind of was the perfect ending to this story between these two because I think game 7 would have been too controversial. With all the calls and errors that we've had in the series, game 6 being as clean as it was, all in all, was clean as it was. It's still obviously going to be controversial.
You're going to have stuff.
Game. But I thought all in all, this was the cleanest game. It ended perfectly. Curry got his. Curry won the trophy. Lakers did it. Not the Lakers. Golden State, they got another one. The dynasty is back. Clay had a good night. Wiggins probably has an argument for a big contract coming up when his contract eventually expires. His effort in this is just, you can't even deny it. It's amazing what he does, and looks to be, he's on for next season at $33.5 million guaranteed, and then he'll be a free agent next offseason. So we'll see how that ends up turning out for Wiggins. But in my opinion, without Wiggins, Golden State does not win this title, and that's a huge thing. His efforts in this postseason for Golden State were phenomenal. Draymond Green nearly dropped a triple-double in the final game. Jordan Poole really has stepped up to look like he can be that next guy if Clay needs to take a step back. Jordan Poole can fit right in there, continue things. The third Splash brother is in it. Kevon Looney, you know what? He's got 3 titles, so what can I really say? No points, but, Looney isn't there for points. So, all in all, thought it was a great finish. Congratulations to Golden State. Like I said before, I wanted Boston to win only because that was who I picked to win. At the end of the day, not mad at the result, how it went. I thought this was great for everybody because I think it does, maybe most importantly, relieve pressure off of Boston and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And I think that's important for them to build their future because the last 7 years they've put together great teams and they haven't been able to get over the Eastern Conference. And they finally do with a young group of guys. And I think if you're a Boston fan, even though you lost, there was a lot of bright side that came out of this. A lot of positives to take away. And I think going away from this game, Boston finally has the making of something. And I think that's something they haven't had in a while. Something this fan base really needs. Because if we're being honest, the NBA is at its best when Boston is a great team. It always has been. Their golden years have been when Boston has
Almost
been at
every
the
year.
forefront of the conversation.
Yeah.
And so I think doing this now, when Jaylen Brown goes out there, drops 34 in your final game, even when Jason Tatum has an off night, and you just saw the way these two are able to play the game at such a high level, you're excited because these guys are still a couple of years away from their prime. And realistically, even though the fact Jaylen Brown's 25, that prime in basketball, 28 to 32, is normally what we consider those prime years for a basketball player. Football's earlier, a lot of other sports are. Basketball, averaging 28 to 32. It might have started to creep up a little bit towards 26, but I like 28 to 32. Now you're telling me you got these two guys that are going to be supermax players by the time they get to their prime. That's something that we haven't seen in the NBA out of a lot of players. To get multiple guys on a team to get up to that level at this point, I think you just have to keep playing the cards right for Boston. Keep your guys, make a couple of change-ups. You saw what it took to get to the NBA Finals. You know what you need. The blueprint has been laid out. Now it's just time to execute. You can go out there, figure out why you lost that game, and start building back to it because we saw they had all the pieces to get there.
Well, and I think the piece is what you're saying too, because I agree with that part. I think if you're a Boston fan sitting here, obviously you're disappointed you lost, but you're looking at this point next year where if we get Robert Williams, who's back a little healthy next year, we would hope so, because I want to give him credit, number one, for this whole playoff run. He's found a way to play. He's gave them productive minutes, gave them some big moments when he's clearly been hobbling on most of these games. So I want to give him his credit there. So getting him back healthy next year, if they're able to address the point guard situation that we were talking about the other day, if they can do that stuff, keep playing the way they are, and keep focusing on what they are and what got them there this year. Because this year was different, like you said. The last couple years, they couldn't get it done. This year, they actually got to this point. They didn't capitalize on it, but they got there, somewhere they haven't been. So if they can keep this together, maybe fix a few things here and there, they're gonna be back, bearing any injuries or anything like that. They're gonna be back. And I think that as far as last night's game, which you were talking about, I think coming out, they started out 12-2. You're thinking, hey, this is Game 6 at home. They're coming out fired up, 12-2. It's gonna be a long game here. Whether they win or lose, they're gonna be control for this one. Right when you say that, Golden State goes on this 21-0 run. In the middle of the first quarter, started in the second quarter, some parts of it, that was a game right there. And I think for most of that part, obviously, like I said, when that stuff happens when you're playing them, it's demoralizing. And I think that showed last night with Boston is that stuff was going on. It seemed like they didn't know what hit them, and they were inexperienced, number one. And that's part of the reason why I picked Golden State to win last night and to win in 6, because if you look at all their championships, they've won 4 of them. 3 of them they've won on the road. So they know how to close out these titles on the road, and last night was no different. And I just think that part of it showed, and I think there were spurts throughout the game. Boston started out good. If they were able to avoid that run, they played good the beginning of the first half, the first quarter, and then the end of the second quarter. So they were parts of that first half they were playing good. Then, like you said, they actually played better in that third quarter. So if there was just, and again, this is what we've been hitting on in most of our losses this postseason, is that if they're able to stop this, if they're able to turn it over less, it's always been if they can just do this, and they haven't found ways to do it. And like you said, that's part of the experience.
And the ifs haven't been big ifs either. It's just been these little adjustments, and this Boston team is back up there as one of the best.
Yeah, it's just a couple less turnovers, couple extra more passes. It's just they're that close, and like you said, it's that youth that showed it. And like you said the other day when I was kind of getting on Jason Tatum a little bit for not taking over games. And like there's been some players his age that have done it, some players that haven't. Not everybody's that way, but that's just part of the experience process. People got to go through it. LeBron got through finals in his fourth year. He got swept, but he had to learn some stuff. He got knocked down after that. Lost Boston a couple times. Had to leave and go figure things out. So you're gonna figure things out. You got that experience. You're going up against. There's no discredit losing to Golden State. I mean, a lot of people lose to them in the last 8 years, and you found things out about yourself. So I think from both sides, like you said, I think it was a good ending. I think Golden State got the redemption that they've been wanting, right? And we're just questioning if they can keep going, which I think they can. And Boston, there's a legit argument they could be back here, and they have what it takes. But it was a good ending. I like the way that series turned out.
I guess I have one final, I think, question to ask from this on the side of Boston. And who was, all in all, the best player for the Boston Celtics in this postseason? Because Jaylen Brown finished with more points and more rebounds per game in this playoff series against Golden State. And I know Wiggins was the one guarding Tatum and not Brown, and that was definitely a big impact. But the shooting numbers were better for Brown, more consistent at the free throw line for Brown. Turnovers were less for Brown. Steals were about the same. Blocks were about the same. Plus minus in the differential, Jaylen Brown was plus 0.2. Jason Tatum was negative 3.5. So by statistics alone, Jaylen Brown was the better player. But Mike, you're better with the eye test. Who was the better eye test player in this series for Boston?
I think that's a tough question from the part that we kind of looked at the Celtics team the last couple on this run. At least I did. I think I remember you mentioning it a few times that it's not that like they don't have that guy. Like it's just they're a team, which is not a bad thing. It's just they're a team, and they have any given night somebody can have their night. And I think there was more nights in the playoffs where it was Jason Tate or Jaylen Brown's, and yeah, that's what you're saying with the point stuff. But Jason Tatum's our guy. But I would even probably maybe push it back. I know there's been every player on Boston's roster that we've questioned. We've questioned Marcus Smart taking too many shots. We've questioned Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum with the turnovers. But I'd probably lean more towards Marcus Smart being their best player on this run. The defense, I know his shooting's been inconsistent, but it was a lot better than it has been throughout his career on that run. It seems like every three he was hitting, it was a big shot. And his defense, what we're talking about, I'd probably go that route. And probably second would be Jaylen Brown.
J and J's, you're going with Marcus Smart.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, if we go with the differential here, like we like, the best player on the floor for Boston this series in that department would be Robert Williams. And I don't think that's even a stretch to say. But the fact he was only 7.5 points and 7.5 rebounds per game, his impact in this series was huge. And he was shooting at 77% from the field. He didn't try any threes, but I think you do also have to give a look over to Robert Williams. 2.8 blocks per game out of this series. That's marvelous to see. And I love Robert Williams as the future center for Boston. Really locked down that spot. But I'm going to go a little differently here with the eye test from you. I do really like Robert Williams eye test-wise because I thought he had a huge impact. Marcus Smart had some big looks, as did Al Horford. And Al Horford undoubtedly had some big moments that will go into his career highlight reel. But I thought when the chips were down and somebody needed to deliver, it was still Jason Tatum over Jaylen Brown. I know Jaylen went big last night, and it was a bad shooting day for Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum was also being guarded by Andrew Wiggins, an all-star and a high-level defensive player. Jason Tatum was getting guarded most of the time. Otto Porter, Steph, who we'd have a size advantage against. Gary Payton Jr. has a side advantage there. Jordan Poole and Klay Thompson, all of which Jaylen Brown has a size advantage and an athleticism advantage over. So I think if you would put Andrew Wiggins on Jason Tatum, you're going to see the same differential numbers that Tatum was able to draw in comparison to Jaylen Brown. So I think the eye test still has Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum as the best Celtic in this playoff series. But Jaylen Brown's a close second. He's one of my favorite up-and-coming players in the NBA.
I think that's a tough question for the Celtics team because, like I said, nobody's really done it. You could probably say Jason Tatum, like you said, but nobody's really done it consistently for them. We've been questioning every night who's going to step up to help somebody out. Are they going to do it in back-to-back games like I question with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum? Are they going to have great performances together in back-to-back games? More often than not, they didn't in this series. I'm not arguing what you're saying with Jason Tatum. I really don't think there's a wrong choice in that question because I think everybody had their moments where they stepped up, but it just wasn't consistent.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
and I think I'll ask you a question because maybe it's not so much a question, but maybe a statement that after every championship in every sport, we question like, is this team going to get back here? The team that won it or lost, is this team going to get back here? Who's in their way? I would like to think the way Boston was, if Robert Williams gets healthy, if they bring in another piece here and there, they stay healthy, I would think they'd be back. But the Eastern Conference is getting a lot stronger than the West right now. There's a lot of younger teams that were fighting for it this year. Most notably our team, I'll mention them. The Atlanta Hawks were just in the conference finals last year. Other teams that are going to be on the come up, and I think there's more of that in the East than in the West. So if you'd ask me the easiest road, I'd probably say Boston, but I want to hear what you thought about that.
About what getting back, if either one of these teams can get back.
Yeah.
Okay. I was having this conversation with actually my roommate last night a little bit on a couple of things, and it mainly stemmed off of something you sent in the group chat about the East runs through Cleveland again. Just a joke you.
Well, that was a joke,
Twitter.
but yeah.
Right, just a joke you see on Twitter, and there was just that tweet. I just went, "Oh, that's hopeful." And my roommate just goes, "Do you think Cleveland can actually make the run?" And I went, I don't know, because I think you look at this Eastern Conference and the Nets are going to be back. Philly's going to be back, and most importantly, they're going to be back healthy. And we're going to see Embiid and Harden work together a whole season. I want to see how that turns out. The Bucks are still going to be the Bucks. The Heat have been retaining this high level of play for the last couple of seasons. I don't see a reason for that to drop off. They're a title contender at the moment. The Raptors are a good team. The Bulls are up and coming as well. They're putting together a great roster, and I think they have number 18 pick in the NBA draft this year. So I think there's still plenty of spots to get a great pick out of that one. Atlanta, we have seen consistently be up here at that 8 spot, a 40-plus win team. Charlotte is now up and coming. They've got LaMelo Ball, and he has certainly been carrying a load.
Good coach they got, too.
And great coaching over there and great management. New York, we saw them in the playoffs last year, not this season. But I think if one more draft pick, I think they are very close to a 40-win team. I mean, they had 37 wins. If Julius Randle gets back on that high level, they get some development out of Obi Toppin, Nick should be right in that conversation. Wizards have a very young roster that definitely could make a big season next year. Depending on what the Pacers do, we'll see if they can turn things around. But I legitimately look in the Eastern Conference, and I'm seeing a dozen teams that I think can all make a run for the playoffs. In all honesty, make a title run. I think you look at the Eastern Conference next year, and I'm sure this will be even more the case after the draft. You look at the Eastern Conference, and out of the top 10 teams, realistically, depending on who they go up against in the West, can all win a title. A dozen teams. Wizards, obviously, the farthest off from that. But I think after what we've seen out of the Knicks, I think you can look at them as a serious team out of the East if they have another good season with Julius Randle and their crew. Hornets, I see no reason why they're going to fall off. Cleveland has everything building their direction. Atlanta's building up. Nets, we'll see what happens with them. Nets are the biggest question mark, obviously, because of the big names they're trying to pull in. Bulls have been building a great thing out there. They were up in the top of the race. Raptors, 76ers, Bucks, Celtics, Heat have consistently been there. So Celtics, while they don't have an easy ride, I think they'll be back, mainly just because they give me no inclination to say otherwise. I think maybe the thing I'm kind of thinking of here, because Boston's here every year. But Boston is in the playoffs, and you always have to beat Boston, and it's always a question, can you beat Boston? So I think next season, Boston back in the NBA Finals, I cannot guarantee. Back in the Eastern Conference playoffs, 100% I can guarantee Boston will be right back in the mix of things, in the conversation next year, especially after we saw their big second half turnaround of the season. Can you imagine Boston if they were playing at a high level all year long, what their record could have been? Phenomenal. Love that performance over there. And for Golden State, can they get back here? I think there's just as many question marks, because the Suns had a letdown. Suns very much should have beat Dallas and probably would have opened up the door for, the run against Golden State. And I don't know if they could beat them, but I think it would have been close. I think they had a good shot. And I like what they got over there in Phoenix. The Memphis Grizzlies, a very strong team. And I think they've got a good draft pick position this year, despite being a 56-26 team. I think they got some chance for some offseason moves, some cap space to work with. I think they can be right back here next year. Dallas, the acquisition for Christian Wood, they gave up a lot to get it, but the things they gave up, I don't really think hurt them that much because they weren't really using them anyway. And I think bringing in Christian Wood as your big, decent choice, don't love it, don't hate it. It was a good move, not a great move. Utah Jazz and the Denver Nuggets both have great players. Both have shown consistently to get above 45 wins. And the Nuggets, they have an MVP on their team in Jokic. I have no doubt both those teams will be back. Timberwolves may actually be like one of the bigger question marks for me in the Western Conference because rumors are D'Angelo Russell is out of the team. So I think that does hurt and potentially puts them back down a step because I think D'Angelo Russell finds success. I mean, you look at D'Lo and everywhere he's been outside of LA when they kicked him out to Brooklyn, took Brooklyn to the playoffs. Now he gets booted out to Minnesota, takes Minnesota to the playoffs, a team that hadn't been in the playoffs. So success follows D'Angelo Russell, and I think Timberwolves might be a question mark. Pelicans, they're going to have Zion back. And however much he plays, if he plays and plays meaningful minutes, this dude is a 20-plus point per game player when we've seen him out there. I don't see a reason for that not to happen. I think it'll be very fun to see. Pelicans also have a pretty good pick because they're only 36-46, despite making it into that 8 seed of the playoffs. So I think they got some ability there to make some noise. All in all, Clippers 100% should be back, especially if Paul George and Kawhi finally play and get out of the injury bug. See no reason there. Spurs, I think Spurs was the big shock that made it down into the 10 spot this year. I don't think they really should have been there, but they made it. And
thanks to the Lakers.
Well, right, thanks to the Lakers completely falling apart. But once again, it's the Spurs. It's Greg Pop. I think in this postseason, I said it on the show the other day, I think Popovich is going to let his assistants pick this year's draft pick on where the future is going to go. I think he's going to take a more hands-off look at this NBA draft and just say, hey, you know what? My time's coming to a close. What do you want? What do I need to build you and leave you something good? Because I think that's how he's going to do it. He's not going to leave this team in shambles. He's going to try and keep this team where it is and constantly improving. They're only 6 wins under, a 40-win team. So I think they're a good team. In the Lakers, anytime you have a LeBron on a team, they're a playoff contender. So they're going to be back. Under them, I think I can confidently say I don't have faith in the Kings, Trailblazers, Thunder, or Rockets. But on the same side, Trailblazers, if Damian Lillard gets going finally and does something, they're right back in the mix. So not confident they're going to do that, but it's always a conversation. So after breaking both these down, I do think the road is harder for the Warriors. And I say that only because they're aging. They're aging quickly, too. And the rest of the league coming up behind them is young, athletic, and they play the same style of basketball. And obviously, Golden State will always be the best at that because they originated it. Just like no one ran the triangle better than the Bulls. No one's going to run this three-point offense better than Golden State ever did. But I think you're seeing better teams than Golden State play, but they just lack the consistency we've seen out of Golden State. So the road is easier for Boston, but I still think it's more likely you see Golden State back in a championship game sooner than Boston.
I think it's more likely for Golden
just
State.
Because they've been there. The consistency for Golden State never lacks.
Yeah.
They're in the playoffs, they're in the finals. That's just how it is.
That's what I was going to say. I think it's more likely for Golden State, and I guess that's why I'll pick them as the team that I think would get back there the soonest because, or maybe easiest, I guess is the best way to say it. But I think it's because, like I said, they've consistently done it 6 times in 8 years. They've done it with different personnel. They've done it with different stars leading the roster. They've done it with Kevin Durant, without Kevin Durant. They've done it this year where I thought they were going to win the championship this year, but a lot of people didn't. A lot of people didn't think this was a skilled enough team that they've had in the past. So I'd probably give the edge to Golden State because I'd just part of the reason because you just ran down the Eastern Conference standings. There's probably only 2 teams that I would say can't make the playoffs or at least challenge somebody, and that's probably the Pistons and the Magic. I like what the Pacers have in their young roster. I'm looking at some of the teams here at the end. I like what they have with their young roster. I think if they get some other things going there, I think it's the same thing with Washington too in New York.
I
Like you
like
said,
Pistons, actually. They have a good offense. Their defense was just kind of bad this last year, I believe. I mean, I was looking at stats the other day, team stats, and that was the one thing. I mean, I think they, as a team, were like allowing like 115 points per game or something, and it was outrageous to see how bad the defense was when their offense was up there among the best.
yeah. But I kind of put them in a part where maybe the year after that they could start. You put them in the conversation because they have a bunch of young guys. You've seen the Cavs go through that growing pains with young guys, and they're actually starting to turn the corner. And I think I'm not saying this because they're my team, but if they can, we'll see what they do with this draft pick. If they keep it, draft somebody. If they try to trade it for something that they can use, whatever they do, the back point guard position. There's a couple teams in the playoffs that this year that were ahead of them. That I think they can finish in front of. So we'll see what they do. I'm not just saying that because I'm a fan of them, but and like I said, last night I sent that thing in the group chat. I was joking about that, but
Right.
in the next couple of years, you can't rule anything out. And you don't. I feel like the Eastern Conference is a pick'em conference because any of these teams could have done something this year. They didn't, but there was a lot of question marks with a lot of the teams, with Philly and with Brooklyn. But it's pretty much a pick'em conference more compared to the Western Conference. But like you said about the West, I mean, you're going to have Denver next year with fully healthy with getting Jamal Murray back. So they're a team that's going to be up the top. Phoenix will see how they respond. I like the Clippers. They haven't had their two stars healthy the last 2 years, so we'll see what they can do. But it's going to be interesting.
They've still been competitive.
I think we could have this conversation more in the middle of the summer after free agency, after the draft. At least on paper, we could have the conversation what we think is going to happen. So, but it came to my mind because you always have that in your back of your head when after a championship series ends, who's going to be back next time or who has the toughest road. Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely an interesting shot to open up. Another interesting one, though, Mike, as we're moving on from the NBA. NHL, tomorrow, Game 2. Can the Lightning do anything in Colorado to slow this team down?
I think this is kind of in the situation where they were in the last series against New York because we talked. It's hard to beat Colorado at home, and they struggle beating the Rangers at home. We're also good at home in the playoffs. So I think they're in a situation where if they're going to tie the series up, it's probably going to be winning the next 2 games at home after this one tomorrow night. So I'll put them in that situation with that. But I do trust Vasilevsky. I know he's been inconsistent in these last couple of series, but they've started all these series on the road. They haven't had home ice advantage in any of these series, and they found ways to win it. So I'm not saying they're gonna. I'm just focusing on this game. I'm not trying to get at the big picture here, but I think tomorrow night you're going to see another Avalanche win. I think it's going to be another close game. Maybe they jump out in front again. Maybe Tampa Bay gets back into it because they know how to do that stuff. But I think you're going to see another Colorado win at home. Just in the sense that they don't get beaten at home too much. So until I really see it a good amount, I'm going to keep rolling with them.
Yeah, no, I think I'm right along those same lines with you. Avalanche, my big thing is I don't know if the Lightning can win a game in this series because it just momentum is with the Avalanche right now, and it's coming down, pun intended, like an avalanche. And I don't know if the Lightning have anything to take it away because we haven't seen anybody really even make it a discussion against Colorado in the playoffs. They've had close games, but at the end of every close game for Colorado, they still win. And I think that's the biggest thing. I know a lot of games have even back up. The home team has been winning a lot, but that hasn't mattered for the Avalanche. And going into Game 2, I don't see it changing up. Avalanche, they're just too good. I've been on Tampa. I want them to take this. I want them to three-peat. It would be huge. First time since, the 80s with Edmonton that someone has had.
Gretzky, yep.
3 in a row. They had 4. But to get back to a three-peat hasn't happened, and we're talking near 40 years in sports. That's immaculate. That's something you don't see every day. And that's something you want to happen as a sports fan. Three-peats are awesome. That is what the sports live and breathe on. It's having those big runs like that. So, obviously, I want Tampa to pull this off. I was the one pulling for them start of the playoffs, start of the season, when we were making our picks months ago. I said Tampa. I picked Tampa because they won back-to-back. I think you and Matt were like, yeah, they're going to be good, but I think there's better teams. And I went, it doesn't matter if there's better teams. Just like with Golden State, doesn't matter if there's better teams. Recently, if they've been there, they've won it. And I like to think Tampa can still do that at the end of the day, but Colorado has been a menace to society.
I think this is kind of similar to what we just saw in the NBA Finals because you're going up against a team that's done it multiple times in the last couple of years, and you're going up against a team that, like Colorado, who's been building for it and getting to this point, which is how Boston was. And I think it's like you said, you're looking at experience wise, what you feel is the best team. It's Tampa. So I still feel like they can, because like I try to have this mindset with the NBA Finals because Boston starts out game one. You think based off game one, you're like, oh, they're going to win the series easily. To me, I go game by game. Obviously, if you're going to go based off game one, Colorado's going to win the series pretty handily. Not handily because it was close. Tampa came back, but if you're going off based off game one, Colorado's going to win the series. But it's a game by game thing. That's why it's a series and that's why Tampa Bay's been here before. They've done it in this playoffs. They've done it. I didn't think they were going to beat Toronto after the first couple games of the series. I didn't think they were going to beat New York after the first couple games, but they found ways to do it. And if you're looking at Colorado's side, the reason why they're so tough to beat, they've only lost 2 games in these playoffs, and it's only been to one team, and it's been to St. Louis. Other than that, they haven't lost a game. So that part of it, there's a lot going into it. We just got to see what happens tonight. I know it's cliche and it's easy to say that, but we just got to see what happens tonight because it's a game-by-game thing for me. Tampa Bay certainly is capable of winning there, but it's just you got to go out and do it because it's hard to play there.
Well, that's the thing. They're obviously capable because they've won 2, and they've done a lot. They're capable. But I just haven't seen anybody do it against the Avalanche.
Yeah.
They're right now. It's just as much as I think I want Lightning to make this comeback, make it a series, make it fun, give us a little bit more to talk about before it just becomes baseball for a couple months. I just don't know if they can really do it. If somebody – I know they can do it against a normal team.
You don't know if they will.
And against a good team.
Yeah.
I don't know if they can do this against the Avalanche this year.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing because, you're saying kind of similar to what we saw in the NBA. Somewhat, but I think this Avalanche team is the best in the NHL right now. I mean, you look at just the way teams are playing and a lot of back and forth series in every single conversation. And then you just looked over at the Avalanche and they were just steamrolling through everybody in the playoffs. And you're just like, well, we didn't see this from anyone else. We didn't see that in the NBA finals. We haven't seen that from anybody else here in the NHL playoffs. The defense from this season from the Avalanche and their scoring ability was near unmatched by anybody. I mean, and I know the 2 teams that matched them close are 2 teams that the Lightning beat and were ahead of in the division, so they should know how to play them. But at the same time, it's always a different animal.
And I think the thing here in this, at least so based off game one here, if you're going to break things down here, we always talk about in hockey you got to have speed. That's definitely an advantage to Avalanche. If you're talking experience, if you're talking, grind it out, make the right play, make the right pass, make the right angle to the net, that's definitely probably Tampa because they've done it before. That's how they got back in the game the other night. But if you're going to go based off that stuff, you got to have a good power play. Colorado has that. Both these teams do, but Colorado's power play kill is pretty sweet. Both teams have good goaltenders, but the reason why they're so good is because they get the puck, they get out in transition, they keep it in their offensive zone, and they normally capitalize on it. Both these teams do, but Colorado, that's like you said, that's why they've been one of the higher scoring teams all year. That's why when we picked their games all year, we pretty much picked Colorado in every game we picked in one of theirs because of their scoring. And I know it's a big thing you look at because obviously you got to put the puck in the net to win. And I know that's a big thing you were looking at throughout the season was your goal differential. That favors Colorado. So, and having home ice advantage, that definitely helps. So if you're going to break things down, pretty much everything favors Colorado. But like I said with Golden State, like I said with other teams in other sports, you still got to beat the champ. You only won 1 game so far. You haven't beat the champ yet. Like I said just a moment ago, you got to go game by game in the series. And we'll see what happens tonight. We've got to see what unfolds.
Yeah, well, that game Saturday, so tomorrow night.
Or Saturday, yeah.
But yeah,
I'm used to hockey being every other day. That's why I thought it was tonight.
Right. No, but we got to wait till tomorrow. So we'll see how things go with that. Finish off the show last 15 minutes. Mike, want to get into some Major League Baseball?
Sounds good.
Because it's getting interesting again. Yankees now at 7 in a row. Chicago's at 3 in a row. Cleveland's at 4. AL Central is about to get real fun here in the next month. I got a feeling. And Atlanta, they're closing in quickly on the Mets. 14 in a row. Chicago's completely fallen off. They're now down to 10 straight losses. Pittsburgh finally got one back, and now they got a game today against San Fran, so we'll see what happens with them. But this next month of baseball, despite the fact that then we got a lot of teams slumping, should be really fun. Because I think you look at it all in all, and you look at the way the season's gone, midway point of every month, I think we've had kind of this slow roll so far. Middle of May was a little slow. Now here mid-June, we're seeing that similar kind of dip down in excitement around the league. But I think it's still plenty there. I mean, we just had 2 immaculate innings in the same game the other night, which was phenomenal. That doesn't happen. Right. An immaculate inning doesn't happen every day, and they had 2 of them in the same day in the same game, which is just phenomenal to even see. So I think right now baseball's in for some big moves, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Most likely ones are the AL Central. I think this is the most likely one to flip around a lot, because Detroit very close to dropping down to last place with Kansas. That'll flip. Minnesota is just 2 games ahead of Cleveland, only 5 games ahead of Chicago. I mean, these 3 I think are going to tussle for the entire month of July. So that should definitely be the most common division of looking at here in the next month. The AL West, I think that actually will be interesting, but only because Texas, Angels, and Seattle are all this close to one another for that second spot in the AL West, which all in all might not matter at the end of the day if they don't get a wild card spot there, and doesn't look like they will, at least at the moment, get that wild card spot down in the AL West, just the way we're seeing other teams perform in this division kind of taking a step back. But I think it's still interesting to see, can the Angels make that comeback? They've hit their long skid. Now they win a game, and they've got Seattle coming up. Can they jump ahead? Can Seattle turn things around and take it against the Angels? AL West should be interesting to watch this next month as well. NL East, obviously the main storyline is Atlanta and the Mets, but Philly's right there, and Miami's not too far back from Philly now. So if Philly and Miami are going to be battling for the 3rd spot, well, you got New York and Atlanta dishing it out for that number 1 spot here in the next month, which should be very fun to see. NL Central, you should see a battle coming up now between St. Louis and Milwaukee, because Milwaukee's now lost their last game, 2-8 in their last 10, looking terrible. But St. Louis is still only 5-5. Pittsburgh taking some wins against them was huge for the NL Central to keep St. Louis down a little bit and allow Milwaukee to potentially have a shot. Still even keeps Pittsburgh in contention too, because they're only 10.5 games back. Should open the door right now. Those bottom 3 teams in Cincinnati, Chicago, and Pittsburgh are now just 2.5 games separated. So that should be awesome to see. I mean, Cincinnati now, very real today, has a shot, a really good one as well, to move out of last place to the NL Central. Cubs are going up against Atlanta. They're not likely to win that whatsoever. 10 straight losses, and Atlanta is now up to 14 straight wins. Going to continue. Cincinnati has Milwaukee. Milwaukee's been bad recently. Cincinnati, for the first time this season, might be out of last place in the NL Central, which is awesome. And it opens the door with Pittsburgh right in front of them, going up against San Francisco, which obviously won't be an easy game, to potentially take that as well. So Cincinnati in the next month can move from last to 3rd and start building towards something new in the NL Central. NL West should continue to be a tight race between the top 3 teams. And I'd say don't count Arizona out just yet. 38-35, I don't think count them out just yet. I think they're falling behind, and I don't think they have enough to keep up. But I would just say, wait a minute, because I kind of like what's going on there. I think there's some potential.
I think we're in a part we talked about this. We're almost at the halfway point of the season. Another couple weeks, or another 2-3 weeks. We're at the halfway point. It's hard to believe, but I think for most of this season so far, and pretty much every year you do this at this point, we've been talking about these teams. Are the schedule's going to even out? Who's going to emerge himself? Who's going to fall apart? I think you're at the point now where we pretty much know what we got. I mean, some teams might be able to sneak up on you. Maybe the Phillies get on a run. Maybe, like you said, the Marlins in that division. There's really nothing surprising right now, because if you're looking at the American League, I'm not surprised Yankees are in first place. AL Central, maybe like you said, it's going to be a tight race. We're going to see what comes down to it. I don't really think there was a odds-on favorite coming into that in that division to win. Who I thought was going to win it this year. I had some picks, but I really didn't think there was a clear favorite. AL West, we have the Astros. We also expected that. Mets, we kind of thought in that division it was going to be them and the Braves. That's what we got right now. Cardinals and Brewers in the Central in the National League, and a 3-horse race. Maybe even throw Arizona, like you said, in the NL West. So I think at this point we're not really surprised. We're starting to find out who's going to emerge and who's going to be contenders. I think pretty much know what we got right now. I think it's going to be fun to see what comes down here. I'm definitely looking forward to that American League Central race because as bad as the White Sox are right now, I'm still not throwing them out just yet. They're only a game under 500. They're only 3 games behind Cleveland for second place, who's also 2 games out of first place. So that's going to be a fun race to watch. I think it's probably the most entertaining one left. But just overall, I think you're pretty much getting what you expected out of some of these teams.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems like every day, despite the fact that we keep just talking about standings, that it has been a pretty fluid standing so far this year. And I don't think this next half month here in June is really going to turn that over because I think we still got a lot of tight races going on.
There hasn't been too many surprises. I know we're surprised where Boston's at 34-30 in 4th place. But I'm looking at both leagues here. There's really not too many surprises. I think, like you said, I think it's been fluid so far. It's not really anything that's put us on our heels that, oh, this team's up here. Are they going to keep it up? Or this team stinks. Are they going to get back in the race here? I think there's.
Well, I will say there has been a surprise. The Angels completely fallen off here.
Fallen off, yeah. Well, actually, I was surprised their hot start they had because I thought they're going to be maybe a playoff team this year, but they start out pretty good, more than I expected. So yeah, probably from starting out good, starting out bad, both sides of it. I think with the Angels, I've been surprised by.
You know what? No, I will say there has been a big surprise for me, and a huge surprise actually.
Let me hear it.
Baltimore is less than 10 games under 500 in the month of June. We are over 60 games into the season, and despite the fact that Baltimore's 20 games out of first from the Yankees, they're closer to making the playoffs than a lot of other teams. They're only 7 games out of the wild card spot. They're less than 10 games away from second place in the AL East. And to me, I think that's a big shock. With how bad, terrible, disgusting Baltimore baseball has been to watch these last couple of seasons. To see where they are right now this year, that's great. Great to see in baseball because the AL East, as much as New York has run away with it, it looks like the most competitive division because they have almost every team over 30 wins already.
I think in that part of it, yeah. But we all thought they're going to be in last place. But like you said, the record rate at this point is not bad. But I'm not really too. And I heard a lot of people saying this when Cleveland played them a week or two ago. That we got to sweep them. They're a bad team. Yeah, they are a bad team, but they're not what they were the last couple of years. And I didn't even think I expect them to be bad again this year because I think they're in the same boat as Pittsburgh. They're going to be bad for another couple of years. Bringing up young guys, you're going to go through the growing pains. They've had a lot of the core of the young guys have been up the last 2 years. And they bring in guys like Robinson Chirinos, and they bring in guys like Rougned Odor, who are both power hitters to go along with those young guys. So I think I get they still got a long way to go, but that part of it, yeah, I'm not too surprised by that, if you're asking me, because you're bringing up they just brought up the number 1 prospect in baseball. I know he hasn't performed well yet, but they're bringing up all the young guys. They're just going for it with the young guys, and they brought up in veterans, like I said, and it's going to pay off. It's going to get better for them. It's getting better for them this year, right now.
Yeah, it has been. I mean, I'm interested to see where it goes, but Mike, things that leaves us down just a couple more segments on the week, so let's go right into it. This week's highlights of the week. Mike, why don't you go ahead and lead us off with this one? Maybe.
I really don't have a good one. If you haven't, go ahead, because I got to think.
I guess I think I have 2, like one sports, one non-sports. Non-sports, as hot as it's been, it has been beautiful in the evenings a lot of these nights. Once that sun goes down, humidity drops a little bit, we're getting some like really nice 80-degree nights, and it feels like sitting over on the East Coast down in Hilton Head late at night or early in the morning walking on the beach. It's just that temperature. It feels cool. You get a nice gentle breeze. Weather in the evenings recently has been awesome. And I got to say, I'm loving it right now. Makes me feel great. Love that sunshine, love that vitamin D, but those evenings and mornings, that's the best time of the day. Sports highlight, though, Golden State's return. I think probably the biggest highlight is just like, wow, I can't believe they're back. This is insane. Good on them. But I think those are two sports highlights of the week. Number 3, though, I have to say, Buckeyes finally getting new turf. They ripped up the old stuff on.
Thank you. That one was ugly. That stuff was
faded. It was technically last Friday, so when it happened, but didn't come out until after the show, so I'm using it.
That stuff was faded.
It was bad.
I brought it up to you last year, and I'm surprised you noticed it because a lot of people don't notice that stuff. But it was end zones were like pink.
Yeah, they got a new design. We're gonna have I think gray striping around the outside of it with the football helmet stripe down at the end zones. Underneath the field goal post. So the field's going to look normal, going to look like a normal field, but they're going to do some stuff around the outside, kind of like NBA style, where they got that edging going around it with colors.
Yeah, that stuff I'm fine with. I'll get into my highlight in a second, but since you brought that up, I want them to get something new, but keep it basic because I like teams like Ohio State who are big brands in all of sports. Those type of teams keep things simple. I like that. So, and I think that's a lot of teams do that. So I would like to see them keep it simple and throw in some little splash of modern things. But for my highlight, I thought about it. I kind of mixed in a little bit of what you were saying. I think for me, this having both finals this week, having the NBA Finals and the Stanley Cup Finals, and I was enjoying sitting outside because I have a TV on my deck. I was enjoying sitting out there in the evening time, having a couple adult beverages by myself. It was relaxing. I loved it. Yeah. So that's my highlight.
Here's the new field, by the way. Just pulled it up. So
see, that's not that different.
Some clean end zone lining in there. A solid field. They're going to redo the O, make it fresh. I like the new lettering though down in the end zone. I think it's.
I like the back of the end zone by the goalpost. The helmet stripe. I like that.
I love the helmet stripe. A lot of fans were upset it wasn't fancy or anything, but I love the way they went with it.
Keep it simple.
Right, keep it simple, stupid. That's the way to go.
Yep.
And with any further ado, talking about stupid. This week's Meathead of the Week, it's going out to the fake Klay Thompson. Dude gets thrown out and banned from the Chase Center during the NBA Finals because he went around and was shooting warm-up shots with the team on the floor.
This guy's been around for a couple years now. So, why is he just now getting caught?
Because now he's getting on the floor and doing it. He took that extra step, and I just got to go, come on, man. You people were loving you. It was a great thing. And now first season in the Chase Center, and you're already getting thrown out. It's just like that's a meathead move.
I got a feeling that they're going to lift that at some point.
Maybe, but I think at the same time, might not be for the worst.
The guy messed up. He probably shouldn't have done it, but give the guy credit. He got through that. You know how hard it is to get through security in anything, let alone sporting events? That dude found a way to get through it. I'll give him credit for that part of it.
Yeah, give him credit, but nobody else, please try and get on the floor.
I don't encourage anybody doing that.
Right. Yeah. It's not a good thing to do. You will get thrown out. You will get arrested. You will get banned from arenas. I've seen it a lot. Heard about it a lot. Don't do it, or else you'll be the next week's Meathead of the Week. But that's going to do it here for the Casual Sports Podcast. I'm Alec Brenna. That's Mike Wolfgang. Full crew back at it next week, at least for Monday, hopefully. We'll see you then. Power Hour up next.